Um. So Nate.
Are we starting?
Yeah.
Good morning and good afternoon to you all. My name is Nathan. Sorry, I'm just like news anchor kind of.
So testing is finally done. The race starts this
This
time
weekend.
next Sunday. Sunday morning. Are you
Ah!
hyped? I can't wait. Um. So testing is finally done. We have all the results. We're gonna talk about testing itself and what our predictions are gonna be. Maybe some other stuff. So, what'd you think about testing?
Um, Pretty much stayed up all night for testing. Not cause for real, we would be up like around 3ish, and we'd be like, "Oh shit, testing's happening," and like just put it on real quick. But like low key, I didn't really pay attention to testing,
No, I mean,
cause like it was just nice seeing the cars back on track for testing. But then like seeing the what's it called, the flow paint,
flow viz.
flow viz,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool.
With all the paint and
Yeah,
then
the little like rack things they have on the.
yeah, so those are sensors that each team runs. So when the air is moving through them, they can see how it's moving through each part. And then specifically with the flow viz, they can see how
Where the air is
the air is
kind
going
of,
along each car. A lot of people are familiar with the scene that like from Ford versus Ferrari where they put yarn all over the car. I know you haven't seen it yet, but that's an old style of how they used to do that, and then now that's how they figure out what's happening. Because in F1, you want to see those things, but because it's so small and the car is much more aerodynamic, it happens on a much smaller scale that you won't be able to tell. You need millions of pieces of yarn to see it.
no,
So for the F1 cars, using Floviz and those racks help get a better understanding of how the car is functioning.
like the aerodynamics of it, kind of.
Yeah, and the key bottom about them, they can only place them in so many parts of the car, and they can only do it so often that they can't really get a full understanding of how like the car works. Like they can't put a rack right behind the front wing. They can put it in between the wing and the or the tires and the side pods. But they can't do it in
Right.
the in betweens. So that's why they use the flow viz, so they figure out the in betweens, which helps them.
Geniuses.
Well, yes. So looking at the times, Sergio was the fastest on day 3. He tested for 2 days. The second day and the third day, he did a half day on the second day. Third day, he did the whole time. Second was Hamilton, who set his fastest time on the last day as well. Bottas set his fastest time on the last day. I think everyone did set their fastest times on the last day. The slowest, actually, no, I take that back. Depending on the driver, but the slowest person was Esteban Ocon, but I don't think that is bad. And we'll get into it right now. Other notable things, Pierre Gasly was also other Renault. He was 17th. Williams and both Williams were towards the bottom at 16th and 18th, with Logan Sargent going faster than Albon.
Is it in total or for just day 3?
No, this is all the times.
Okay.
And then McLaren was 13th and 19th as well. So they were towards the bottom.
Yikes.
Verstappen was 11th. So, I mean,
That's what we like to see. That's what we like to see.
we'll get into it right now. Alonso was 9th. Philippe Drugovich, which is
The
replacement for Lance Stroll, which is their testing driver. He's going to be driving for them next Sunday.
Do you have a picture of this or like a link?
I'll put it up right now. So he came in, replaced Lance Stroll. Lance Stroll is apparently injured. I guess we don't know what it is. It's on the Google Docs. We don't know how he broke his. According to media, he broke his wrists, both of them, in a cycling accident. How he did that, I mean, I guess tough luck, buddy. But again, I do hope he gets better. But it's not bad seeing a Brazilian in the car again.
Oh, he's Brazilian.
He's Brazilian, but he's also like other stuff.
Other
Drogovic
stuff.
does not sound like a Brazilian.
Yeah, that's why I was like, wait, what? Brazilian?
Yeah. And then so Alonso was 9th, George Russell was 8th, Tsunoda was 9th or 6th, but Nick DeVries was 14th. So there's a big gap in between the times that they set.
Yeah.
I do want to point out that Nick DeVries, I think they had troubles on their last day as well, but his fastest time was a 1:38.244. And that was on the third day. And he didn't set like a few laps. He did full 87 laps. So I don't know why he was so slow that day. Seems kind of strange, but looking for notable things. Leclerc and Sainz 4th and 5th. The slowest time, I believe, is 1:33.4. The fastest time was a 1:30.3. Like I mentioned before to Nate, these cars are slower than the 2019, 2020 cars. I think at this point maybe like a second or two, but we'll see when we get to qualifying.
So hard for that qualifying is gonna be.
Here comes Charles Leclerc.
In this article I'm reading, or I was looking at earlier, they said Ferrari ended on a high for preseason testing.
Okay, so looking at these times, what do you gather from this, or you're still thinking about it?
It's like I can't really tell like how things are gonna go because like they could like have these times for preseason testing, but then come qualifying, all of a sudden they're like
just quick as fuck,
fast as
So yeah, times don't really mean anything. And going to the Alpines or Alpine, whatever you want to say, they both like I guess in testing didn't place very high, but they both were at like looked to be averaging the same 133.2, 133, 132, or 134. And that's about the race pace of the cars
during a race.
So they're able to set that time. That doesn't mean that that's their fastest time because they could be sandbagging, which is when they either fill up the car with fuel or they add more weight to the car or specifically slow down on laps so they're not pushing all the way. So some of these teams might be doing that. I think one way you can tell that like a team is doing good or bad during testing is just watching the facial expressions of all the team members, the drivers, the team principal, and how they are reacting to interviews. One thing, like, so when Racing Point copied Mercedes in 2020, like they were trying to play down that their car wouldn't be that fast, but you could look at like Perez and Lance when they were being interviewed, like they just had smiles because they knew the car was really fast and they couldn't wait to get it on track. Now the whole pandemic thing happened, but like they were trying to say, like, I don't know how fast it's gonna be, but it feels really comfortable to drive.
Yeah,
and they're all like really happy because they know it worked. Same thing when Mercedes brought their DAS system.
Yeah.
They were pretty excited about the car. But that same year, that's when Haas and Ferrari did really bad. All the Ferrari powered teams, and you could tell like they were already kind of upset. Like they knew that their engine wasn't going to be strong. They knew their aerodynamics weren't up to spec.
Yeah.
So you can kind of tell. And the teams that look that way, that I've seen, is McLaren, Mercedes a little bit.
I know Alonso at the beginning, or like when he first joined Aston Martin, he was like,
the first day he looked really upset, but that's because his car broke down, so like that's understandable. Yeah. There was another team. I think we'll get, if I could find it, we'll get to them later. So starting off with, I guess, the best performer out of testing, Red Bull consistently were on the top most throughout each day. They constantly set a lot of laps. They didn't have much problems with their Honda engines. I think AlphaTauri did, but that may not translate directly to Red Bull.
Yeah.
Their car does look a lot similar to last year. There is some notable differences. I believe their side pods and floor extend out to different points. Their rear is a little bit different. But overall, it kind of looks like the same concept and design from last year, just evolved a little bit.
Because, like, they had a really good car last year. Like,
Yeah.
it's not much you can.
So that leads what I'm thinking, because they're really hindered by the budget cap this year. They have a lot less wind tunnel testing because they were caught cheating because they broke the budget cap in 2021, and they're being penalized for it now. But they're still really fast, which is really
Concerning.
concerning for the other
For
teams.
us. But it's really good for them,
For
obviously.
them,
Like,
and they're probably gonna have like one or two big upgrades, and we'll see how far that takes them. They didn't have they did have pretty big upgrades last year, but
I don't really remember, like, people saying or talking about Red Bull upgrades. Mainly because they were already, like...
they had some pretty like good upgrades, mainly with the side pods. It used to be kind of like all flat, and then it turned into like that twin design. So it was like shaped in two different ways. You know what I'm talking about?
A little bit, yes.
So like the entrance would be kind of like one way.
Yes.
Then when it gets to the rear, it like completely changes. It's not like how Ferrari have the cut out in the middle. It's a little different than that. A lot of teams are running black this year because weight saving, which I don't know how I feel about that. At
Like,
least,
if you're painting it black, at least, like, with the glossy, like, then, yeah, that's nice. But if you're just, like, using the carbon fiber, I guess, it's like...
there's ways to do it right, and I'll point out an example. The 28, I'll put it up right now. 2018 Williams. Now it was a slow car, but it looked like I think that Williams was the best looking of their Martini, so the white, red, and blue. Are more black to save weight, but I think this is a good example of like a car can still look really good
And perform really good.
this wasn't a good car, but they could still have no, they can still have a livery that contains a lot of black, but it still looks good. So in previous,
This is white!
no. So yes, it is white, but they have nothing on the front wing. There's no paint there.
True.
Before in previous years, the whole like car was painted white. So like from the front wing, well, not the wing, but the front, like the body of the car was all painted white.
So you're fine, like, if, like, the body of the car was painted at least, but, like, the wings and stuff, like, the
Like-
smaller things weren't. Like, I feel like that's... more
Alpine's a
valid,
really
yeah.
good example of this. Like from the sides, it's all painted,
Yeah.
but from the top or in the front, it looks normal. Follow me?
Yeah, I'm looking at slide 11.
Yeah. So for them, that's like 12.
That's fire.
Yeah. So the top, like it can be done in tasteful ways.
Because the sides are painted, the top is black. Oh, okay.
I think Mercedes kind of cheated the system. No, their whole car is like just carbon fiber. But then on top of that, they made the only black that they have matte. Which, like, the reason why the black cars look so good because it was all glossy black.
Yeah.
It looked like clean.
Just all the other cars look better glossy.
Yeah. I don't think I don't think there's
Bro, if Ferrari had, like, the same red they have now, but they made it glossy.
like the old ones. I think I have a picture of that. Yeah, it would look a lot better. I don't think any team is glossy anymore.
Alfa Romeo, no?
But they literally have a whole part that's cut out for black. I mean, it does look good.
But the only, like, glossy-ish looking one.
Yeah. So going back to testing, we mentioned that McLaren looks like they are having problems. Ferrari a little bit. Mercedes a little bit. Alpine didn't look super concerned, but
We're just really trying to test, like,
they're
setups.
like they're not like concerned yet. No, I didn't see all the onboards, but Aston Martin I think is going to be really good because if you look, when you're watching someone drive, you want to look for key things. So when they're like turning in, how much they have to turn the wheel, how the car is reacting on the exit of corners, on bumps, how the car is behaving as they drive. When you see a bad car, you'll see the driver fighting the car a lot to get turned into the corner, and on the exit, it's struggling for traction, or it's oversteering, so they have to point it in the right direction.
Like with the wheel, they're just like...
Yeah, there's a really famous video now of Alonso driving the 2014 Ferrari, and like literally going in a straight line is difficult in that car. It's just like not working at all, which was a bad year for him. But looking at the Aston Martin, I did notice on like the exit corners, it would lose traction a little bit, have a little bit of oversteer. But that's how Alonso likes to drive anyway. I think that helps him a lot, which I think is going to be difficult for Stroll, which we'll get to.
Because he's not something that... It's not something he might be used to, right?
He's more used to like how Perez drives, that more smoother. I could be wrong about that. I think he likes a little bit of oversteer as well.
But can't they like kind of tune it for each car now? Like,
yes. So like that is the thing. They can tune it for Perez or Verstappen, or like whoever wants the car. But because the whole concept of the design can have more front downforce or whatever. How the car is like initially designed will lean towards it being one way or the other.
Okay.
And normally it would be leaning. So Red Bull, they lean it to however Verstappen likes to drive the car, and he likes oversteer. So you want a lot of front end grip. That's how a lot of the fast drivers like their cars. Perez likes a car that understeers more than what Verstappen likes. So the beginning of last year, the Red Bull's car had more understeer, so Perez was able to have the advantage in the first like 7 races, and he was pretty close there with Verstappen for some time. And then once they started upgrading and giving it towards more Verstappen's angle, then you started to see him get faster and faster. But I mean, Perez says he really likes the car, so he looks excited.
But he's always looked solid in Red Bull. Like he's always consistently up there, getting race wins too. So I think he's in a good place.
Yeah. And then Mercedes, they've already come out and said that the design that they have, the side pods, is going to change.
Like for the next year, or
no? Well,
like throughout the
season.
Okay.
So I think that leads me to believe,
they're allowed to do that, like change the side pods completely, kind of.
Yeah, they can, as long as it falls within the upgrades.
Okay.
So you could like take what Aston Martin did last year. They started off with one design, but it was already designed for another way as well.
Yeah.
So like a lot of their resources was like, okay, spent more at the beginning, and they have 2 concepts. If one didn't work, they try the other. So they found that one didn't really work, so they changed it, and it helped a little bit, but they're kind of slow anyway, so it didn't matter. So I think that's one thing that's was scary before that we mentioned, is that Red Bull hasn't changed their car much, and they're still really fast. They look to be really fast. And I have it noted down, but the other 2 teams that I've seen have radically changed their car is AlphaTauri and Alpine. Alpine and Aston Martin. Too many A's. I mentioned this before to you, but if you go to the Aston Martin, they have a really aggressive side pod design. Not as like Mercedes level, but in terms of like cutting away at the side pod, like the other teams are doing, theirs is the most aggressive. And I think they're having the most benefit out of that. Even more than like Aston Martin, their car, I think I mentioned this last time, but their car is a lot different. And that's exciting to see. And that's like, it's different from front, like the whole design is different, which is like what you want to see. If you want a team to make big changes, it's not going to look like last year's car.
Yeah.
Even Mercedes' car, it looks similar to what they had last year, but the side pods and everything else, they've made some pretty big changes. And I think it's helped them for the drivability of the car. But they admit like they're still struggling with some minor issues with the car. I think it's with they're suffering from a lot of drag, which is surprising because they have no side pods, and they're also suffering from a lot of understeer, which normally you would associate. What you want to have is if you have a car that makes a lot of downforce, you expect it to have a lot of drag.
Mm.
What you don't want is a car to have a lot of drag and not a lot of downforce. So even like with Mercedes, like if they had a lot of downforce and was like fast in corners, yeah, they might have like not top end speed, but they'll be able to keep up in the corners and the tracks that depend on corners, like Hungary, probably most of the street tracks.
Red Bull Ring or whatever it's called.
That's more top speed. Yeah.
Because I remember Ferrari there.
Yeah, like they'll be able to help them. Like they can still fight in some places.
Yeah.
Which is good for them, but they don't have top end speed.
So like in those races where.
Yeah, and I think it's because they don't have side pod. This is more speculation now.
Yeah.
They don't have the side pods as everyone else, so they're losing aerodynamic gain from not having it. So therefore, they're compensating by having a bigger rear wing, which is causing most of their drag
issues too.
Yeah. It looks like they've sorted out the porpoising. I think not many teams had any issues.
So you think in the end they'll end up with side pod kind of design? Like,
I'll be interested to see what
they come up with,
what route they go, because we have like the Red Bull, which AlphaTauri's kind of copied.
There's Ferrari with the like.
There's Ferrari with really wide and like sweeping side pods. Then you have I call it the Aston Martin kind of look. So a little bit more narrow, but really cut out side pods.
Yeah.
Alpine have kind of copied Ferrari, so it's a little bit wider, but it sweeps out more. It's not as like aggressive in that way.
Like there's a small little just don't.
That's the right photo.
That's why.
Oh, okay.
No, isn't it?
It's pretty. I mean, it's cut out a lot, but not like the other teams.
Yeah.
Ferrari. I mean, it's not insane. But anyway, so that's like the 3 current designs. And speaking of like AlphaTauri and what they've had, they look to be struggling a lot. Their car hasn't changed at all for much of last year. I mean, I take that back. It has changed, and there is differences, but it doesn't look to be helping. And their car kind of looks all over the place in terms of driving it.
But then for AlphaTauri, is it more like, I don't know. I don't think I've ever seen them as like a serious team, because they're like, isn't that like their junior pro kind of?
Yeah, but apparently, like according to them, they're trying to be a top team as well. Now they want to have 2 top teams, because now they have like so many top drivers in their state, like in the Red Bull category.
Yeah,
that like it's kind of a waste having a good talent stuck at a lower team and keeping them lower.
That's true.
So like, why not have 2 top teams, which is not going well anyway.
I don't think it will go well this season.
Yeah.
That's for later.
Yeah. So, and then speaking about Ferrari, they were having some issues on the first day. They later tweaked their car so then it became very stable and quick and fast.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you remember last year, but they were kind of chewing through their tires a lot.
Yes.
I think they're having the same issue again. Which, I mean, they can get around it if they have a good strategy.
That too.
Which they have a new strategist now.
I remember when Ferrari was testing, there was like was it testing? I think it was testing. It was like on the front wing, like a little dent.
Oh, that was it failed.
It failed?
It wasn't supposed to do that.
Okay.
Which, like, yeah, it's like, oh, that's a cool design. Like, midway through the race, to like, they get more downforce, but that's highly illegal.
Yeah.
You can't do that.
That's what I was assuming. Like,
I mean, you can say like it keeps breaking, but
yeah,
at some point, like, it can't keep breaking the same spot every single time. So, and I mentioned this to you earlier. If you don't talk about a team, it's usually because it's not that they did anything bad.
They're just like, they're okay, kind of, no?
Like no one's really worrying about them. If if a team's being talked about in like testing or practice sessions, it's either because they're really fast or they're really off pace. Or if you're not talking about them, they're usually kind of where you expect them to be. That's the teams like Alfa Romeo, Haas,
I haven't heard from
Williams.
Mainly those three, I think. Because
Yeah.
a lot of people are talking about Alpine, Aston Martin, Mercedes,
Ferrari, Red Bull, because those are the big teams.
and then McLaren because of how like
Yeah, and then another big upset is McLaren. They look to be having a really bad year so far.
what does their car even look like?
It honestly looks identical to last year, and that is not in a good way. They had a pretty crappy car last year compared to like recent performances, but even then, like the fact that the car hasn't changed much, and they're still having like all these issues.
Like in a sense, all they did was remove the paint.
Yeah, I mean, they have gone for like some type of sweeping design, if that's what you want to call it. So the more wider but cut out look, which is good. But both drivers look to be,
Miserable.
yeah, that's a good way to put it. Just miserable. I believe like their car is overweight. Overweight meaning that like there's a minimum weight requirement, and all these teams are cutting off paint to meet that minimum requirement.
Yeah.
For them, their car is just too heavy, and it has a lot of drag. And either the weight is not so much of an issue, and I think it's more of the aerodynamics. So that's kind of an issue for them. And all the other teams, I know Williams, I want them to do better, but I don't know where they're going to end up just because it's like
New car, new driver.
new driver, new car, mostly new car. But I believe they're the only ones that have a Mercedes engine that's not suffering from top speed deficits. They've always used to be really good at
They were
like,
pretty fast last year in the straights, kind of too.
in like the mid, when they went to the turbo era or the hybrids for the first time, the first like 3 years, 4 years of the hybrid era, they were known to have one of the fastest straight line cars. They had the Mercedes engines, and like their car just didn't have a lot of drag. Then after that, that's when they became really bad. And now they're kind of getting like you want a car to either be really good in one thing or good in everything. So I think they're kind of focusing and getting back to like, all right, let's go for straight line speed.
Yeah.
Make sure we're like good there, and then we'll focus on getting the downforce back. I don't know if this is true, but I mean, it makes sense if you're struggling. You don't want to be like McLaren trying to fix all your issues at once, or Haas come out with upgrades and then they don't work.
Yeah.
You would rather, I would rather like fix one thing at a time. And this is because of like the new restrictions on budget and like how many upgrades you're allowed to bring.
Yeah.
This is like a multi-year issue now, because they clearly haven't fixed it from last year. So they're going to spend this whole year trying to catch
Fix
up.
that. And then the next year trying
And
to
if
fix
they don't
something
fix
else.
it, then they either have to radically change their car, or I mean, I don't know what they're going to do. I think that pretty much covers testing. I mean, there were some like retirements, but there was no crashes or anything.
I think one of the Alfa Romeos like just stopped near the side of the track or something.
Yeah, Mercedes had some stoppages. I don't think Ferrari did. Did they?
I don't think so. I don't think Red Bull did either, right? No.
No. I mean, you could just look. If you look at like all the laps that they completed, if it looks really low, then maybe. I think Verstappen did. He didn't stop on track, but he didn't run for a long period of time because there was an issue with his car. Aston Martin the first day. I think it was like almost right away the car didn't like it stopped on track. That's why Alonso was upset. So next we'll go to predictions.